So calling to order the April 12th, 2023 meeting of the South Elementary School Building Committee. We don't have anybody virtual, right? Other than the project team?
Right.
Okay, good. First order on the agenda, first order of business on the agenda is public participation. This is the point in the meeting where we invite people to address the building committee with any questions or comments that they might have. We've done it at every meeting and always will. Not something that we can vote on or discuss at length during the meeting itself, but an opportunity we invite the public to use if they ever want to bring anything to the committee of concern or just general questions. So if there's anyone here who has any questions, please step forward. Hearing none. Item 2 on the agenda, acceptance of the minutes of March 29th, 2023. Has everybody had an opportunity to review those minutes? And does anybody have any comments or changes? I did not review these minutes, but I'm comfortable having seen about 8 years of your minutes, Dom, that you're...
Well, that was Eileen too.
Was it? Eileen.
There were typos, both of us had.
Eileen takes a transcript of the meetings, so...
Yeah, there's a majority of this is transcript.
Yeah.
Could I just
Sure, please.
question, so section 4 under myself,
Yeah.
so when I did change to the T-shape, that
Yes.
was, and wanted to amend that, it wasn't complete thought, it was because the documentation that was sent to us prior was different than what was presented on the screen. So I think that just needs to be fully captured and updated to reflect that that was the reason for the amending change.
Yeah, I saw it, and I was gonna give you a call, actually.
That's okay.
Melissa,
Where
But
is
if,
that? Where
so
is
it's,
that page you on?
so right above number 5, we're on page, they're not numbered, so 1, 2, 3.
Okay,
right above 5, so...
Right above 5, Melissa Lynch, yep,
Yep, I see it.
yep.
Okay.
And how did you want it said?
So I think it's just to amend the change to, that my preference was the T-shape, but that was amended because what was provided via email was different than what was presented on the screen, and we were remotely. So the reason for the amendment is what I would like to bring forth, because that was mentioned in the meeting.
I'll make these up.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any comments or changes? If not, is there a motion to approve with that change?
So moved.
Second? All in favor, say aye. Opposed?
I'll abstain. I
Abstain.
wasn't here for that.
I'm going to abstain too.
Well, it's good to have you both back. I missed the meeting before that, so. All right, Dom, you're taking minutes, right?
Yeah. So the next, basically the next 2 items on the agenda, Courtney and Carl, when he gets back, we'll go through this presentation that's up here. I'm going to hold the button so Smack can hear everything that Courtney is bringing up, and ask that, Courtney's voice will come across my computer, so if you're having a hard time hearing it, let me know, okay? I don't know how much I got the volume all the way up, so. You ready, Courtney?
I'm ready. I'll do my best.
That's pretty good.
Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
In general.
That's good. All right. So we have a few agenda items here. The first being communication. And one of the things that we've done is we've put together this poster, and this is being spread around town. We have some at the YMCA. We have some at the library, and we wanted to put one of these in each of the schools. Katie has some copies already, and we want to make sure that all the schools can get these. This is just a generic one that tells people this project is going on. Here's the website, here's the QR code that you can go to find out more information about it, because there's not everyone in the community gets onto the Facebook and online and sees the same resources. So we thought that hard copies and posters that are up in front of parents and teachers and staff would be very helpful, as well as the ones in the library and over at the YMCA. That was one of Katie's suggestions. That was a good place to get some and get more coverage on the community. So this is just, like I said, we'll keep these up for a little bit. We'll probably switch them out later in the project, but this will just keep people aware that it is ongoing. So a little bit that we've talked about with the working group is the current schedule. And the current schedule, we had submitted the PDP on April 4th, and MSBA has that right now. They're reviewing it, and they'll be presenting comments. And our next target deadline is the PSR in June. And that we will continue to work through and continue with in terms of our schedule. But there is an opportunity and some flexibility in our schedule and with the MSBA board schedule and the review schedule that we could potentially make some adjustments in terms of our submission. It's something that we want to talk to, get feedback from you all as well as from school committee in terms of what your thoughts are there, because we know that there's some changes that have been made or will be making in the district, and this is an opportunity to get a better reading on the town. And there are some big decisions to be made with redistricting and consolidation. So this is something that we would like to get feedback from everybody on in the near future. So we know there's no decisions being made tonight, but this is something that we have been discussing.
Do we want to just talk briefly that I did hand out a draft of upcoming meetings, et cetera.
What-
Right.
Why don't we save that to the end so we don't interrupt Courtney's
Right.
rhythm, and
We'll
if
talk
we
about
want
that.
to,
All right. So you've seen this schedule before. So this is our current schedule. We'll continue to work on this path. And the meetings that were proposed will review towards the end of this meeting. And this is a list of the evaluation criteria that we looked at previously with this spreadsheet, this non-legible spreadsheet. But so these are the ones that we're looking at in terms of evaluating the overall project options as we look forward, and we're trying to narrow down from those 11 options down to potentially 5, different options down to 2. So following this last slide where we're going, we're right about here right now, and we need to get, in June, we need to get down to our 2 options. So using these different criteria, we can evaluate what is poor or what is more beneficial in terms of these different site options. And seeing them color-coded will be very helpful. So this is a list form, and these are not locked in, they're not set in stone, so these will require your feedback. And we have a working spreadsheet that we can take a look at tonight, but this is a little overall snapshot of it. So you can see that we have everything listed from base repairs, the ad reno options, and then the new construction options as well. And what we stated in the PDP that was submitted to MSBA is that we were not recommending the ad reno option 2 for the consolidation project, and we were not recommending moving forward with the compact plan, which was the new construction plan on the shared existing sites moving forward. So you can kind of see this is our first crack at the different evaluation components, but like I said, these are not set in stone, but this is just an example of what it could look like once we start looking at these items. So going back to the list, I guess we were hoping to get some feedback from folks tonight on if there was anything on this list that we're missing or maybe need to remove or adjust as we move forward. And anyone that has feedback, please let us know.
I have one comment, Courtney. I don't know if it's an evaluation criteria, but I also had a question. So you said 2 options by June. And I guess that raises 2 questions. Does that contemplate a June filing? And second of all, when you say two options, we're submitting a preferred solution. I assume we're going to 1 option whenever that comes about. So when you say 2 options, you're talking an outside date of well, I don't want to guide your answer.
Well, that was our original targeted date of June 27th.
So
where
when
we're
we come
having
up with a preferred solution, we're only coming up with one option though, and that would include a consolidation determination from the school committee, right?
Correct,
I
correct.
thought
At that
so.
point, we would know which direction we were heading, and then
Yeah.
looking at that option, the two options are really consolidation or replacement.
I'm sorry,
So
that seemed like a stupid question, so I apologize. I only had.
No,
one-
it's a good question.
No, it's,
I only had one other criteria, which I don't know that it really, well, let me throw it out and then see if you can put some shape to it. So we have in that Fano Drive parcel, something like 25 acres, something like that? I forget what it is. It's like 14 acres, 8 acres, and
oh,
Yeah,
totals.
the total for that parcel is right around 27 acres
something like that,
for
right?
all three.
Right. So I guess my only comment would be, we're evaluating, of course, based on, the best design for that particular school that fits all of our other criteria and blah, blah, blah. It would be nice if somewhere in there based on the fact that there's 27 acres, it would be nice that if we could, in my mind, and maybe my mind only, if it could be configured on the site so that there were some flexibility for future development for something, whether it be town development, I know school expansion would actually be part of it, but that's and I don't know that we're there because we haven't done any hard engineering anyway, so, but
I think,
does that make sense?
yeah,
There's some wetlands constraining it to the north and northwest, sort of. So that kind of defines where the buildable area is. But if there are a way to fit it in so that there's a good, healthy parcel of, I don't know, call it like 5 to 10 acres if possible. I know there's fields also we have to account for.
yeah. I think we really have to do tell me if I'm wrong, Courtney, we have to do more geotech.
Oh, sure, yeah.
We would have to do more geotech, and what you can't see on this slide, and you can probably see it on a few slides that we have in the future of this presentation, is basically that there are more wetlands that
Right.
are bordering that other side as well, and the properties that are adjacent to Fano Drive. So we can take a look at that.
I'll just tell you what's going through my mind. What's going through my mind is, we do this building, it's successful, there's 27 acres, and 5 years down the road, someone says, well, why didn't you use all of that land? So if it's possible to configure it so that there's some flexibility for future development for something, all very vague terms I appreciate, but that would answer some questions down the road that I know will come. Am I right?
Agreed.
Yeah. So it's been a contentious parcel, and I know it was studied for multiple uses. I'm not saying there are any. I'm just saying it would be good if we didn't foreclose any future options with our choices today. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, we'll keep it
Yep.
on the list, as far as. I think at the next phase, I think that's when we can develop that thought completely.
Right, we're going to be doing further study, we're going to be doing survey
Yeah.
as well in this next step. So that'll give us a lot more information about these sites than what we have now. And along with that, at some point we'll be doing wetland flagging too, to confirm what we know currently with the actual wetlands that are shown. So you can see, the parcels that we're looking at, this is Fano Drive right here, and there are undeveloped parcels in between these town-owned properties, which are in the gold and the orange color, and the line lumber site. So, you can see one good point too, TJ, is, not just wetlands as well, but Don mentioned geotech, and you can see that all these lines on this slide right now, these are all contour lines.
Yeah.
I believe they're like 2-foot contours. they're either 2 or 4, they might be 5-foot contours, but you can tell that we're dealing with a lot of topography here as well
Yeah, I
as
was looking at those this
the
afternoon.
rocky conditions. And we'll look at those in a little bit.
Yeah.
But another point that we have to look at for all of our options is site access during construction as well as, during a final design. So looking at all the options, looking at ad reno, we can see that these red lines here, we're just kind of exploring options where we might have to have construction traffic coming in and making part of the existing drive a two-way drive. So there's options of coming in off of Ash Street, Cedar Street, or we've actually potentially considered there is that easement for the power lines. This terrain is a little steeper over there, but it is a unused path that would cause a little bit less disruption. So obviously that would be a lot more red tape in terms of negotiating with utilities, but it's something that we can't ignore when we're looking at the phasing for this type of option. So you can see that, if we do come in off of Cedar or Ash Street, it's going to get pretty congested with parent and bus traffic as well. This is just a little closer look at that. So you can see how the proposed design would, somewhat improve the parking and the traffic flow in terms of separation of bus and cars. But because we're restricted to Cedar and Ash Street entrances, and a little bit of the topography here is challenging, we have limited expansion options for the parking up front. But these are really kind of a little bit a bottleneck in terms of the entrance to the existing site.
I have some concerns of that.
Oh.
Just,
Oh,
I have okay.
we recognize the
Okay.
concern. We just have to study it.
Okay, that's fine. Just
Right.
making
You
sure.
know, I'm sure Principal Dore has big concerns.
Safety.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why, this is how we're kind of going back to that chart, and we can say, okay, when we look at traffic and we look at phasing and during construction and when it's complete, these are some of our criteria, and we don't like that part of this option, and that's when you go red and, on the chart versus your greens and your yellows. So looking at Line Lumber Site, there are, we do have that one access point off of Park Street. This is a Mass DOT highway, as we mentioned previously. We don't know yet if a traffic signal would be required, but that's something we're going to be studying in the next phase. So that's our main access point, but we also like to look at emergency access. And there is a water easement that connects to Haynes Road over here on the north side of the site. So this is an opportunity to do some sort of emergency access only. And what this would be is this lane would only be used by emergency vehicles. It could be the width of to get a ladder truck in, making sure that we can get vehicles in and out. But we just want to make sure that there is another option to, get off of this site. If for some reason, Carl mentioned earlier, if a tree falls, at the entrance, there's another way for people to get out of this site in a controlled manner. If there's an accident on 27, you want to make sure that there's another option to get, people on and off the school site. So this is one of the second options. And then we also want to consider looking at a connection to possibly Fano Drive. And, as you mentioned, TJ, we want to make sure that we don't eliminate, utilizing this if it's available and it's up for discussion in terms of using this whole site and making it, more advantageous in terms of future development. So this is something that, again, we're going to be looking at in this next phase, emergency access, as well as the main point of access and the Fano Drive. And our traffic engineer will be doing this study, and we'll be conducting a study in the fall with traffic counts, a little bit more information, and he'll be doing that not just for this Line Lumber site, but for the existing site as well.
Courtney, are they looking behind? So I live on Haynes Road. It's a dead end. It's a dead end street. There's no outlet, and that is right that's the corner. I know someone's going to study this, but that's the corner where it comes onto Park and it reduces to 20 miles an hour. And I think the traffic pattern there is just so intense, trying to get out of that dead end even, that it's problematic. So is there any look on the other side towards Sumner or another outlet?
That could be an option too, is
Is-
exiting south towards Sumner, but we would have to look at utilizing Fano Drive.
Yeah.
And the fact that you mentioned, that is an issue off of Haynes Road, that's something that could be taken into consideration, and we can mention that to our traffic engineer as well.
Yes.
So they don't just look at the impacts right at the entrance of the site, they will look at the surrounding areas and how that would affect traffic flow there as well. Because I'm guessing it's really hard to make a left-hand turn off of Haynes Road.
Oh, yeah.
Especially during rush hour, takes a lot of time. There's been a lot of traffic studies there as well, done in the past, but because it's a state road, there have been some challenges in trying to implement any additional signage or slowage or like in that area. Also, that end of Haynes Road is completely wooded and abuts other homes off of the streets over Franklin. So it's not just a clean outlet out, it's completely populated with homes.
Right,
Just for
right.
consideration.
I'm not zoomed. Let me see if I can get back to the other slide to see if it shows it. No, it doesn't have enough information. But yeah, it is wooded right here. There are wetlands that would have to be contended with as well. If there are traffic studies that have been done at that intersection, that would be really helpful for our project too, to have access to those. So I'll make a note and see if we can get those from the town as well.
Old Colony Planning Council has several. At least one I know of, where they studied the Turnpike Street, Park Street connection area.
Yep.
I have it, Courtney, I can email it.
Oh, okay.
That might be a little further
Thank you.
down.
Yeah, it is further down. I think it's within the
Yeah.
study area though
Yeah.
here.
Yep, it could be.
But OCPC has done a bunch of, it would be them or no one probably.
Yeah, that would be very helpful as we go forward.
Can I ask a question, Courtney? This is one of the stupid Recupero questions too, and maybe this is to the committee. Do we need a baseball or a softball diamond on this elementary school, given the number of diamonds that we have elsewhere in town? I know it's only a placeholder, but,
I mean, I will kind of quote, Mrs. Lynch and I had a conversation at our school council meeting this afternoon, and I think part of the pitch to the community was that this school was potentially a community hub. So I would think
Well, I
that.
hope so, yeah.
Right, so I think that one of the things that I would, I mean, again, from a school perspective, no, I do not need a baseball diamond. But I think if you're saying that I mean, you could utilize, we currently have a backstop
Joyce, what do you-
that goes into the field. So I think that would, I don't think it hurts.
I mean, we have a huge complex at the West School, we have a
Yeah.
huge complex on Joe, Elm Street.
Nope.
I'm the one who doesn't know enough about the youth sports organizations. I do know, though, that when I go to the DAW and when I go to the Gibbons at off hours, that there are organized use of the field, and the rec department permits those fields. So the rec department would have a better idea of how they're
That's a
used.
good question, yeah.
But they are used by the community for, again, organized.
I'm not saying don't do it, I'm
Yeah.
saying maybe something else, like another soccer, but I
Keep
don't
it,
know.
keep in mind that that's likely not reimbursable by the
Yeah,
MSBA.
right.
It's got to be on the town's ticket totally, so.
It's just a question.
Right.
I know it's only a placeholder, but on the plan, I was just curious. I keep seeing it and wondering,
Yeah, I know, I'm in a different position because the Wilkins backs right up to.
you have all of them.
We have all the fields, but we do use them for phys ed,
Yeah,
and we use them for field days. So they do get used in the capacity in which they're intended for. And then obviously they're used by the community, but that's obvious. So, but in terms of during the school day, we use them.
And kids do love playing Little League with their elementary school in the background, so, just saying.
well, that's a good point too. See, that's
Yeah,
Yeah, Ted,
it's a
you're-
good question to raise because, as you saw earlier, these aren't flat sites either.
Yeah,
So as we're looking at, estimating the cost of these projects, these fields, are going to add up to a good chunk of change. And as Joe mentioned, the site costs are limited in terms of reimbursement. You're probably not going to get these ball fields entirely reimbursed the same way the building is.
For clarification, does the district take care of those fields like at the Wilkins, or is that the recreation
that's,
department?
the town does.
No, but by contracts, cut the ones at the elementaries, other than the Wilkins, because that's considered totally rec department. So we do maintain them.
All right, food for thought for a future date, I guess. But maybe we should ask the rec department if they have thoughts on it. But I didn't even consider that people would want to play, or kids would want to play near their school. And it does feed into the neighborhood nature of an elementary school, so there's value in it. So, all right, I'm glad I asked, but unsettled.
All right, so moving on a little bit from traffic, like I said, we're going to study that a little bit more in this next phase, and we'll have more to report on. When we talk about the meetings that we have in the future, you'll notice that traffic pops up quite a bit on future discussion items. So we'll continue to expand upon that as we know more information.
Courtney, I just want to
So
add,
here's our three
Hold on,
sites.
Courtney.
sorry, Courtney.
Sorry,
One
Melissa.
more thing, where Haynes Road meets Park up at that top, the Prospect entrance for the new fire station, if that is going on Prospect Street, is not far as well. So we probably need to consider what that flow will be from a fire and emergency personnel as well. I'm just throwing this into the conversation because it's coming to my mind. Because that is one of the questions that was raised before about traffic flow in that area.
And they would have a traffic study also.
They would have a traffic study in that area as well. So they connect on Prospect into Park on that corner, and then there's the Haynes Road is directly across. So just more food for thought as we look at that specific section and how it lays out and plays out as far as the amount of vehicles that will be traveling that parcel in the next 3 to 3 years or so.
And that study's ongoing right now, correct?
Correct.
Should we-
Yeah, I remember discussing that with someone. There's an opportunity to do either, like a rotary or a signal or something over there that would affect traffic flow as it heads south here, especially with emergency responders.
Okay.
So looking at the geotech portion of the site, we have done preliminary study. The report was distributed remotely via a link. Yeah, there's a PDF available to give you a little bit more information than what we're going to show you tonight. So you know that the site is fairly wooded. We have a combination of wetlands, and we have some sloping with some what we would call large boulders that are visible and some ledge that is visible. This is the test pits that were done. There were a total of 12 test pits. They were done with a backhoe, and they were at various points in the site. And we typically do these in areas that are under the building pad or the building foundation. Wherever we know utilities are going to be coming in, we're going to have to do some trenching. And also we like to do test pits where fields are located. So these locations that were picked by the geotech engineer were based on the fact that most of the building was typically located for all the different new construction options. It's located in the same area to maximize the site topography. This is towards the crown of the site so that we can ensure that there's proper drainage. We know that when you do have a lot of ledge and glacial till, the drainage is a concern in terms of the infiltration rates. So locating the building in the right spot is key, building up the building pad. And what the geotech confirmed is that the existing soils, the native soils, are usable for fill, which is good because you can keep some of that material on site if it's handled properly and protected. So that's something that we can take into consideration as we're moving forward with the project design and estimation for the site work. So you can see these little blue dots. These are all our test pits, and there's a fair amount that are under the building pad. And the next photo kind of gives you an idea. They go out there with a backhoe, and they tell us when they get hit refusal. So the ones under the building pad, they range from like 2 feet down all the way to like 12 feet down before they started hitting refusal, which means they usually hit an obstruction, in this case we've hit some boulders. So the next step is we're going to be doing a little bit more test pits, and we're probably going to do some borings where they actually dig down deeper. We'd anticipate probably a 50-foot boring as our next step under the building pad. These are some photos of the site. This is the crown of the site, the highest point in terms of the topography. These are some boulders that you can see that were excavated when Fano Drive was originally constructed. It is a little bit lower than the other side of the site, so you can see that they dug out to create that road. And then this is the utility easement that borders the site, and then a path on the site. So you can see, fairly wooded, and you can see all the, this is fairly typical on site in terms of walking around. All right, so this goes back to our communication discussion that we'd like to continue having and looking ahead at forums. Consolidation considerations in terms of going from 5 schools to 4. So we want to hit these 3 main topics: the operational benefits, looking at a district level, what are we concerned about, what's, beneficial in terms of going down 4 schools and hitting those points, as well as the educational benefits and the project impacts. So we're looking for help from the district, from you all to actually help us put these bullet points together for future forums and for communicating to the community, this is what we need to be discussing in terms of getting from this point to June, especially if we're still aiming for June. We need to make sure that these are like very clear when we talk about it to the community. So just some of the things that popped up today when we were talking, operational benefits can be maintenance and operation costs. And, Joyce, I know you have a lot of data on that already. Travel between schools. There's a lot of, I like to say a lot, but there's a handful of staff that don't stay at one school. They actually move between schools. And so instead of moving between 5 different elementary schools, they'd be moving between 4. Shared resources, such as the libraries, the gyms, those resources are shared between not just the folks in the school, but also looking at the community as well. And reduce cost of multiple resources. If you're consolidating, you're building a larger school, you're not going to be building 2 libraries within the next 10 years. You're going to be building 1 library or media center. You're going to be building 1 full-size gym, not 2 full-size gyms. And educational benefits. These are some of the comments that came up today. These are not set in stone either. When we continue to finesse these, we're looking for feedback from you all. Flexibility within population bubbles. This is something that came up today with our working group. When you have a larger school, you can better handle population bubbles as they move through. And that's something that we look at with Matt Cropper and his group as we're considering these redistricting items. He can actually show across, and we can look at bubbles that are actually kind of traveling right now and predict how that's going to work, and that will actually kind of be evident with this larger school versus a smaller school. And then greater access to special education programs for students. So this is something that we would, again, want your feedback on, with a larger school versus a smaller school. How can we impact more students with this project at this time? And then community benefits. Looking at the cost per student for a new building is actually a lot less for a larger school, because you're not building 2 gyms, 2 kitchens, 2 media centers. You're impacting a larger student population with these shared resources. And then again, we've been talking about this, the reimbursement available from the state impacts a greater number of students at this time, building with a larger school versus a smaller school. And like Jake mentioned before, community amenities, this is something that we're trying to make sure we incorporate into the project. It's an important thing that we've talked about, is making sure that whatever we build, whether it's this replacement school or consolidation, that we're impacting and providing amenities for the community use and not, you know, it's first and foremost education, but we want to make sure that this is community resources as well. And this slide we showed at the last forum that we had. Carl put this document together. This is actually from the MSBA website. This is over the past 4 years, I believe, gathering data from all the elementary school projects. And you can see how many consolidation projects there were. And I just hit a few bullets here. You know, the minimum school size was 315 students, which is larger than what our replacement school is. And the average is actually 630, which is larger than the consolidation enrollment that we're targeting. Does anyone have any questions? I know there's a lot of information on this slide, and we can make it available to the committee.
No,
But I think this is has some helpful information, just looking ahead to give you context in Massachusetts, you know, what elementary school projects are looking like across the state.
You've heard me on this before, but just a question. Are they ordered in chronologically to project date, do you know, or are they just sort of
I can find that out.
It's not
I
important,
don't-
I'm just wondering, because it seems like, see, if they're ordered that the latest projects are at the bottom, then it seems like consolidation is like the growing trend with a few,
Yep.
with a few exceptions.
Well,
And-
I know that Gardner just opened up. They're at 925. I know they just opened up this past year.
I mean, it's
this
4
past
years. It's 4 years, so it's not much of a trend anyway,
I
so.
don't think it's chronological.
No, because like
I don't think so
the
either.
Wellesley
Westwood's
School was one we
younger
looked
than
at, and
Yeah,
it
West-
hasn't even started yet.
Westwood is,
And Groton's being constructed.
yeah, Westwood's in process, I think, the Hanlon School,
Yeah.
so I don't think it's chronological.
I don't know, it struck me as I looked at this list is that our single school replacement is well below what the lowest enrollment number is for an elementary school. It'll be the lowest enrollment school that MSBA funds over the last 4 years, if this list is telling me anything, right? Am I
Yeah,
wrong
I
by
think
that?
that's a nice exercise for us to do. TJ, I'm glad you brought it up. I'm curious now. I think we'll put that together and bring it up for everybody.
I've had some experience with this list when I was at the MSBA, and most of those consolidations were driven by declining enrollments like Stoughton, although some of those communities had more significant decline in enrollment than Stoughton has. But that was the motivating factor behind most of those consolidations.
I mean, it makes sense too, in my mind, that if we did a one-for-one replacement for all the elementary schools in this town, we won't be doing anything else in the town other than
Right.
replacing schools. So, but it's nice to know that we would be consistent,
Yep.
so.
And it would take a number of years for the town to affect that higher population of students if it was done in separate projects.
Right.
Particularly with the master plan having the middle school probably next in line for a project. We won't be visiting an elementary school again for a lot of years.
Can I, on that note, can I ask a question, not as much to Courtney, but to the educational professionals? Would it make zero sense? I assume that we'd be constructing, to Dom and Courtney, with some room for expansion, just, for population growth, if it ever happens, right? So would it ever make sense that if we did reach another elementary school, that another consolidation on a pretty large site, adding on to what would still be our newest school, would that be a good option or a bad option based on the districts or the regions we have, the districts we have for the school? Do you understand what I'm saying? I mean, I know we would evaluate sites based on what MSBA tells us to evaluate, but would that be just off the top of your head, would that make sense to look at?
Well, I think we have. If you look at the facilities master plan, when
Yeah.
you look out beyond the middle school, which is the next project, and you look into the low 30s, 2032, 2033, that would be the next consideration. Would you consider going from 4 to 3 and have 3 larger elementary schools? And if you look at the facilities master plan that's online right now, you can see kind of that progression over the next 10 to 15 years.
And part of my question is tied into the options we have. So for example, if I look at the pinwheel, that looks like less of a design that you could add on to than the arc or the T. So, I mean, I have a purpose to stupidity sometimes.
Well, one of the MSBA requirements is to demonstrate how you can add on to the building in the future.
Right, oh, so, yeah,
We did this with the high school.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Agreed, yep. Yeah, we do have to show where an addition would be
Yeah.
on any design that we're looking at. And I think that's actually part of this next step too.
Yeah.
And I do want to mention that the facility master plan does identify both the Gibbons and Daw as buildings suitable for expansion. And in addition to their building layout and the size of their hallways and the size of their classrooms, they have a considerable amount of land
Yeah, yeah.
around both of them, so.
Oh, good. All right. That's enough. While I was here, I was going to ask questions.
Courtney, anything else?
The last slide we had was, it was mostly related to the current, the current districts, looking at some information that Matt Cropper's group put together. And this is really just walking distances, so looking at quarter-mile walking distances from each of the schools currently, when we're thinking about, district-wide, how consolidation could work. They actually mapped out the quarter-mile walking distances to a potential line lumber site as well. So you can kind of see the reason why we have mapped out the quarter-mile walking distances, that's tied to busing as well. Outside of the quarter mile is when you start the busing for these various schools. And I think, Joyce, you mentioned that there's no schools that are outside of a 2-mile radius, or there's no students outside of a 2-mile radius.
I'm not sure if there's no students, but there's a couple, yeah.
We are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a couple.
No, maybe
It's
towards the
more of an
south.
impact at the middle school and high school, or middle school, because that's really where the law comes into play. But minor, no, we actually have at this point, or this year, and this is unusual, we have no students within a quarter mile who are currently being bused to an elementary. But that request has come in the past. I do have a request for you to pass along to Matt, if you will. This is incredibly helpful to me when I looked at it, except that some of the polygons aren't transparent, so it's really helpful to be able to see through and see the houses, because that gives you more an
Yes,
idea of
yep.
where the density of housing is. Thank you.
So that's basically the end of the presentation. I guess I could bring up our evaluation matrix if you think that's worthwhile to look at that a little bit more tonight and see if there's any other criteria that we need to look at during our evaluation.
Yeah, why don't we bring it up, Courtney, we talk about it a little bit further. And maybe,
I'm going to bring up the actual working
Yeah.
file here.
and
Bear with me while I zoom in.
I was gonna say zoom in a little bit. But everybody has a sample sheet.
That's true.
Before you get going, Courtney, would it, and you can keep going with what you're preparing, but I wanted to ask you process-wise, would it help you if the committee did some homework on this and maybe submitted some notes to you by email based on the spreadsheet that you're going to go through and?
That would be wonderful.
I knew the
Joyce
answer
and
was
I were-
yes. I wanted to hear you say it.
We were going to.
Joyce and I were talking about it, saying, wouldn't it be wonderful if everyone could edit their own spreadsheet?
Yeah.
If I send the working file out
Yeah, well,
and everybody can put their notes in, because that, like I said, we've took a crack at it, but we would love to get your feedback, because that'll help us make this a stronger and more robust spreadsheet. So
Everyone's good with
I
it?
will plan to email it out after the meeting.
And we should also send a draft of what you filled out too, just the,
Right,
Yeah.
it'll have the 2 tabs, it'll
Yeah.
have our
I just-
notes on it.
All I'd ask is that people don't reply all when they send that they send it directly to Courtney, because we're not allowed to deliberate outside of a meeting, so, just send it direct to Courtney and she'll compile and do whatever.
that'd be great.
Yeah, what I can do is I'll compile everything and then bring it to the next working group. And then we can see the results of that at the next building committee meeting.
Yeah, the next working group is in 2 weeks, and then our meeting's in about 4 weeks.
Courtney, the only thing that I suggest, I like the categories, I don't like the idea of going too big on all of them, but as I look at some of the options, especially the existing site ones, it might be helpful to have a column that just kind of captures like the other kind of one-off comments, because there are comments that I would make about that existing site that I wouldn't even come into consideration on the others, but they help kind of define what,
Can add that.
Okay.
yeah.
That's a
But
good-
otherwise, I
yeah,
thought the
we'll
categories
add
were
that
really
column.
encompassing.
Courtney,
Yes,
I have a request.
Jake has a request.
I hear you.
Can I sit with you and can we do a Google form? Because I'm imagining typing all of this into an Excel and it's gonna drive me insane. And probably everyone else, because there's a lot to say about each of these sites. So I already have a vision for what that form could look like, and I can do it with you, and then everyone can just submit it separately. Because you could just do it in the form.
If you're a Google form guru,
I am,
that's an
Courtney.
excellent idea.
All right, let's do it. I think it'll make your life easier too when you have all the information, because then it'll actually kind of almost make it won't be anonymous, like you'll be able to break down the responses, but you'll be able to like copy and paste in what you need versus trying to go through how many of us are here? Excel spreadsheets. So I could do that with you.
That's perfect. All right, we'll work on it. All right.
After MCAS? Okay.
So I think I hit on everything in terms of our topics
Yeah, I think you did
that
too.
we wanted to talk about, other than the schedule,
Right.
which is kind of probably the most controversial thing that we need to kind of iron out quickly. I think I have that one up.
Yeah.
Can I mention one thing,
You go.
though? So 5/10 is the second Wednesday in May. And town meeting, I believe, starts Monday and Wednesday, Wednesday, at least for 4. And there are a number of, I myself will be at town meeting. There are a number of other
Yeah,
people.
No,
Okay.
that's why this is a draft, and we were getting the
Oh,
same.
no, it was actually on the agenda. That's
Oh.
why I was not questioning
Oh,
the
was it?
schedule. It
Oh,
says next
right.
meeting 5/10,
Oh, that's
which is
right.
why I'm asking.
Oh, our meeting,
Yeah, our meeting,
yeah.
This meeting. And I
Oh.
know that's to discuss
that's right.
the consolidation, which is, and I don't know
No,
how long
thank you.
town meeting's going to go, but I think those 4 days are usually, it's a common, it's at least 4.
So you might want to tread water on that for a second, because that ties into the next part that, go ahead, Courtney.
You were referring to Wednesday, the 10th, right?
Yeah.
And there's potential for this to overlap. Okay.
Town meeting, just to be clear, is May 1st and 3rd, and then each Monday, 8th and 10th, and then likely the following Monday and Wednesday as well. I think realistically, we have to count on 6 days.
Until we.
And we'll be
Yeah,
there,
yeah.
we'll be there one of those nights also, so, I mean, it may very well be, I mean, we, the committee, but you'll be there anyway.
Make a presentation to the,
Yeah, so, but we did,
It's on this, but not on
we did when we went over this preliminarily,
part of the agenda.
did bring that up, Melissa, we just kept everything on there for future discussion.
Oh, it's changed, it just was on the agenda.
Yeah, the proposed was to move it to the 11th.
Yeah, we did
Oh, there
move,
you
that's
go.
right, we did move that.
well, yeah, we moved it to the 11th, but you're saying, Melissa, it's possible that they could run over?
No,
Not to
I
the
think that's
11th.
fine. It's the agenda did not reconcile
Oh, yeah,
back with
okay,
this
yeah, I think because we looked at the town, and that's why on this, it says the 11th now, on Thursday, the 11th.
She, yeah, she's saying it's on
It's
the
on the
agenda.
minutes, yeah.
That's my fault.
That-
That's my fault. I just
I saw
sent,
this date, wanted to
yeah.
reconcile that.
I apologize for that.
Okay.
Jeffrey?
Not that I'm an official member of the committee, but I just want to point out the community forum on June 8th conflicts with the high school graduation.
Yeah.
And it's,
We'll get a lot of people then.
especially if you hold it at the Wilkins, it's a popular site to park for the graduation.
Maybe a little upset when they figure out.
You did as much as anyone to get the high school approved, so as long as I'm sitting in a committee, you can speak whenever you want.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. I mean, this is why we put out a draft. I mean,
Yeah.
And we do realize, and we had this conversation today, and TJ, if you want me to bring, that, you know, we're gearing for that submission, and we're trying to keep going, but we do have some flexibility, but we'd like to keep on pat. I mean, I think what our biggest emphasis now is that next school committee meeting, because we have 2 new members, and we want to have the ability to give them a download of what we've been doing and not to overwhelm them. So I think this April 25th meeting, we'll have a better idea of how we should proceed on the schedule going forward. So, but you're bringing up things like, you know, the town meeting, graduation, I know, it seems like every night in the month of May and into June, there's something going on, so. And,
So can I segue off of that
Yeah.
just briefly? And I don't want to belabor it because I think many in the room have already had this discussion in one way, shape, or form. So we're shooting now for a June 26th submission date for the preliminary schematic report, which requires us to make a number of really big decisions and one really huge decision well before that date, so that everything can be incorporated in, tidied up, and submitted that date. And that's to meet an August MSBA board meeting date. And we have, as Dom just pointed out, we have 2 new school committee people, 2 that have been on for a year, well-versed, but the topic of consolidation, anyone who's done it before, and I haven't, but from what I've heard, it's a decision that often takes months and a lot of thought and study. We do have an expert who's looking at everything and evaluating and willing to support us, and I suspect that in a lot of cases, when districts look at consolidation, they don't have that because it's not in conjunction with a new school project or a school construction project. Maybe they do, maybe they don't, I don't know. But in this case, we do, and, you know, that will be a great assistance. But it was, I shouldn't say this in the passive sense, I threw out the suggestion that maybe we slow down and, so I take full blame, just in case anybody wants to. Maybe we slow down and, you know, be deliberative, but I think, someone correct me, but I think what we sort of, the consensus was to bring to this committee was the concept of pushing forward, but being mindful that we're probably going to need more time. Does that make sense? I mean, we don't want a huge gap, because there is momentum in the schools right now. And we want to take advantage of that, but at the same time, we want to make sure that everybody has a full opportunity to study, digest, and make informed decision, particularly school committee people who, sorry, Catherine, I mean, if it's the controversial decision that it is in many towns, it all falls upon you. But, you know, I promised you in an email, and I promised you publicly here, whatever decision we recommend or suggest, I'll be there to support the committee, and I assume everybody on the committee will be also to defend our position, because it will be well-informed and studied. But, so we're mindful that we have a little slack time. I think you made this point, Courtney, earlier, where we could delay the preliminary schematic report until an August submission to meet an October board meeting. Did I say that right, everyone?
that's correct, yeah.
That's correct, yeah.
And we'd still maintain our schedule.
And we'd still
overall.
maintain our schedule, and it's about a 6-week delay from what we had planned. But as someone else just said a few minutes ago, in this town, we have a really jam-packed May. And I don't need to list them off again. New school committee people who really need to know because they'll be called to answer for it. Even though we are there, they'll be called to answer for it. So food for thought. And we don't need to decide it tonight, or would you rather we do? Courtney, Dom? I can tell by your facial expressions, you want us to, who has thoughts on that right now? Because, I mean, they'll do whatever we say.
I think a delay is appropriate. This redistricting can be a deal breaker for this project, and if we don't give out sufficient information so that the community understands how it affects them personally, it's going to fail. And to rush it through, you're going to get the feedback from the community that says, you jammed this down my throat, I'm not voting for it. The other issue is, what are we going to do, what is the school committee going to do with surplus properties? This town has a plethora of surplus buildings. One of these options is considering adding 2 more buildings to that inventory. People are going to ask, you know, what are we doing with all this property? So I think there needs to be at least some conceptual ideas about what has to happen, or what could potentially happen to the South School building, the Wilkins School, the Jones School, anything that's affected by this. And the redistricting, back on that, it's not just the South School and the Wilkins School, it's the whole town. So I don't think we've put enough information out there. We've talked about consolidation, we've talked about going from 5 to 4 schools, but we really haven't given any details or specifics on what that means to individuals. And that, I think, can kill this project faster than anything.
Courtney, what would be our time frame in your mind for when we would be able to tell people, I mean, this is after construction or before construction, will we be telling people where their child will be going 3 years? I mean, we don't want to tell them 3 years ahead of time that your child will be traveling across town or elsewhere, I would assume, but they want to know generally.
So, I mean, that's one of the forums that we're hoping to have fairly soon the next one is talking about redistricting. We don't necessarily have to draw the lines. You can have conceptual ideas about where these zones can be without defining exactly what street they're on. But, you know, Matt Cropper and his group, they've done that. They've come up with some conceptual ideas. We haven't shared them with everybody yet, but that's something that we looked at with the working group, and we can definitely get feedback from people at a community forum. We just don't want people focusing on which school is my child going to at this point, because like you said, that could change and we could be putting the cart before the horse on that. So it's really important to talk about the concept and what it could look like with understanding that we're not locking in any lines, you know, until we get closer to when the school would open. So like that's during construction probably when you would want to actually lock in those lines.
Can she see us or just you?
No, she can just see me.
Oh.
No, I couldn't see everybody's.
Well, I was nodding and wondering if it was doing it any good. But, all right, Joe, anything else on that?
I had a question for
Katie,
Courtney.
please.
Can you hear me, Courtney? Okay. When you had suggested that we're going to talk about the redistricting at one of the community forums, I agree with you. Were you suggesting that we show the few options without the district lines, or just like decide on the option that we're comfortable with and just show that one?
That's up for discussion in our group in terms of how much we want to show and what we think is appropriate at this point in time. If there's an option that he has come up with that we know that's not going to work, there's no point in bringing that up.
That makes sense, Katie?
It does. I guess I'm just concerned about having a community forum in which they feel like, I mean, they're not necessarily voting, I like this schematic better than this, you know what I mean? Like, and I think that that might come up depending on, they're not gonna look at the map and point to their house necessarily, but they're gonna get a pretty clear idea of what school they are potentially going to be redistricted to. I mean, based on, how that map was coded, color-coded. And I guess I would, personally, I would rather show, this is the idea that we're looking at, the lines are not finalized, rather than two different, the two options that we looked at prior were very different. So, and I feel like that would be hard as a consumer, so to speak, to look at that and to kind of figure out, you're then making a decision based on which map you prefer. And I don't, am I making sense? I don't know if I'm making sense or not. Okay.
Yeah, we don't want to, that's what I was saying, we don't want to put the cart before the horse in terms of like people choosing where they're, looking and seeing where their kid's going to school versus the concept of redistricting. So when we start that forum, we're going to be talking about these global ideas, a little bit more of that communication, those slides that we were talking about. Here's the, the district benefits, the educational benefits, the community benefits, and we can dive into those a little bit more. The ones that I showed were just big picture things, but we can get more hard facts that are tied to these things that people can relate to, that I think are going to be helpful in terms of making this decision and getting more feedback as well. And the key is to get the feedback. We got to get people at these forums.
It was, and bringing up what Joe was bringing up, we're talking about getting feedback. We're Vertex is starting to look at, we did this, and I believe it was Norwood, bulk mailing through the entire town to make sure that everyone in the community is aware of the next community forum and the.
I like that idea.
I was going to add on to that. I had some parents of preschoolers approach me this afternoon and say that they think that they really want to be informed on this, and that we need to target preschools, especially the Jones. We have a lot of students. Those students are going to go into the Stoughton Public Schools. Those parents talk to other parents at dance class, at baseball practice, and so we need to make sure. One parent even suggested putting something like the flyer that Courtney put together, putting the date of the next community forum, saying discussion on redistricting and consolidation, this date, this time, this. Print it out, put it in the kids' folders, and send that home, and that we will actually get a lot of response from the preschool parents from that. I think also looking at places like some of the parent groups, there's a number around. I know of some of the contacts there. I know that when we did the high school, Katie Pianokian approached one of the moms group that I was in, and had us, invited us to come along to this, and it got a lot of response from that. Places like BAMSI, the early intervention, because those are the kids that are going to be going into it. Those parents are going to be, once they get invested in this, they're going to be some of our biggest allies, I think, going forward. They may be, focused on where is my kid going to school, but at this point, a lot of them don't know what schooling looks like in Stoughton. And if we can say this is our vision for Stoughton schools, we can have strong support going into this project and then when the building opens.
How about this? It can also, just an aside, because I was thinking this when Katie spoke, because you were sort of sheepishly raising your hand, which isn't a comment on you, it's just, I wanted to make this point, is that I hope these meetings, as, Chairman, I hope they aren't handicapped by formality. I hope these are more discussions than slaves to Robert's Rules of Order, that if you have something to say it. If I don't hear you and don't see that you want to speak or something, speak. As long as you're not speaking over Courtney, Carl, or Dom, or Tim, because, and even then, I do it all the time, so please speak out, and, we're all adults and we all have some sort of level of civility where we sort of order ourselves and don't need me. I would rather we all just speak and have an open discussion. We did that on the high school.
Yeah.
And I think it worked well.
Yeah, and I appreciate what Catherine's saying, is because the high school, we had targeted groups. We had a lot of input from the committee, from the school committee, and from some of the town's representatives who were pushing hard for the high school at the time. I mean, TJ can tell you, I was at the Y, I was at the Temple, I was everywhere.
Dom did about 80?
It felt like 80.
Oh, there's Carl. Carl did,
But any suggestions? I mean, you know, I know that, and I'm sorry I forget her name, but I know the lady who helped me with the
Jean.
the FAQ in Portuguese. You know, she was open to having,
oh,
you know, a
Reggie?
meeting.
Amy,
Marcia, thank you. She was open to, you know, hosting a meeting too, so, but I think we're getting to the point where we can give quite a bit of information, where we were very, very, kind of
I had a,
bubbles, now we're getting a little more tight information, so.
go ahead,
Did
please.
Marcia, do you know if she translated the poster or can translate the
She
poster
can.
that Courtney?
Yeah, we have
Maybe.
not, but we
Okay.
can.
Because they do have the New England Community Center, which is the Brazilian
Right.
Community Center, right, and a lot of our families use that as a resource. And then in terms of, when Catherine was speaking, I was thinking, sorry, now with the, spring sports, we have Little League fields that are being used a lot. The soccer fields are open again, they're being used a lot. There's got to be places there, if I recall, where you can post different things that,
Yeah.
in terms of we're trying to grab more families, then that might be a really good opportunity as well.
I'll reach out, I'll have Courtney forward, and I'll reach out to Marcia and see if she can just
Okay.
translate that.
I have a thought on that, and this ties into what you were saying too, Catherine. What do you guys think about a monthly newsletter? And I could take a first crack at it that would, edition one could be like a retelling of everything we've done to this point, because I don't think most people know what we've done thus far, and they're kind of waiting to see, what the hell's going to be going on with it. They've been hearing about it. So I think, and Catherine knows this because I've written it out for myself and I sent it to her a while. I kept a history of this, so someday we can write a report, which I'll probably never get to, but I could retell a history, and if someone else wants to write a short article, because it should only be one page, maybe front and back, and you can put it in kids' backpacks or whatever, email it, it'd be emailable or something, just public, and if we can do it monthly, it would have, next meeting date, community forum dates, and something that hopefully, because, once we do release the preferred solution, I think I said it recently, that's when we have to play defense. And if we get people accustomed to going to a certain, monthly newsletter on the project, any thoughts on that? Is that, it's work, but go ahead, Jake, please.
Yeah, so sorry, I have to try to catch the end of the South PTO meeting, and so I have to run in a minute, but I just wanted to, I think a newsletter is great. I think all the feedback that we got on the FAQ and on the website, I keep pushing the website super hard. It's in every one of my Friday updates. We send it out to the rest of our principal colleagues. I think it's driving people there. Just to answer a little bit of your question from a while ago, I think there is positive momentum. Speaking from the community that is most affected, but also in a way like least consolidation affected, right? You don't need to really convince any South families of the benefits of a new South building. I can pretty confidently say that. I think I've had parents approach me at Fun Run, at school council, in the parking lot to talk about the updates. I think the one factor that just needs to stay in the back of everyone's mind is I came in 2 years ago. The first thing that I heard was, oh, there's a new building online. Immediately, the response that I got from the community, staff members, and district personnel, to be perfectly honest, was, oh, well, they've been talking about that for years. And that was some of my veteran staff members. So I think the only thing I would hate to see happen is to lose momentum. But if you're saying that by pushing it a little bit allows for no change to the actual timelines and just allows some of the biggest stakeholders to have more of a comfortability with what's going on and what's being asked of them. At the end of the day, Katie and I are going to go back to our schools, and we do not have to answer a ton of questions on redistricting, to be totally honest. So I don't envy you have to answer those questions.
I mean,
But we'd like to have, have an involved opinion, right? And to be able to support that in any way possible. I'll just speak for both of us with that. But, I think you are building, I know the forums haven't been amazingly well attended, but then there's all these questions the week after the forum of like, well, what did you guys talk about? So it's interesting because I think there is a want for the information. I just don't think it's always accessible in the way that we think is accessible. And I don't know how necessarily to make that easier right now, but I think it's just plastering this information wherever we can get
I
it.
agree.
So.
I read the two of you, by the way, and correct me if I'm wrong. You have momentum in your school because it's a South School, there's a new South School coming.
Yeah.
Enthusiasm is abounding, of course. Katie, you have a bunch of people that just want a damn answer.
Yeah.
Is that sensible
Yeah,
way
it's
to
pretty
put it?
fair, and I think that there's a lot of resistance in my community because they feel like, I mean, if I can speak bluntly, they feel like they're
Please.
getting the short end of the stick.
Yeah.
They're all going to have to be redistricted. Probably none of them, if any, a very small percentage will benefit from the new building in an immediate way. So it's trying to explain and pitch how redistricting them to a different school that's not new is a positive. It's tough. That's a tough conversation to have.
Any way we can solicit thoughts on what would make it easier for them? I know there's almost nothing, but
What we tried to start to do at the last forum, and then feel free to
Yeah,
cut me off,
I
I'm
will.
sorry, is like talking about the benefits for the whole community and like what type of things
that's-
could run in summers and afternoons and all of those
And
things.
that's one of the things that Jake and I are going to kind of put our heads together more formally to put together that pro list for school committee meeting. Because I think that when we did it at the community forum, we hadn't had that much time to really wrap our brains around it and come up with some real solid reasons why it is definitely a positive, but we didn't have enough time to really prepare. So I think that is one of the things Jake and I are planning to do. But it's tough to answer to people that are, what's in it for me kind of a thing, or there's nothing positive for me. I walk to school every day now, and I'm not going to be able to do that. My kids, when they graduate from high school, are not going to have a school to go back to for their senior walkthrough. I mean, those are some of the things that I'm hearing, and they're valid points, they're valid concerns. I can see from the bigger picture how this is a benefit to the whole town and to the educational backdrop, so to speak, for all kids here, but to the people that are living it right now, it's hard for them. So I think we're very almost polar opposites. But I have to say that every single family parent I've spoken to is completely in favor of the South School getting a new school. They see that that is definitely needed. So there's not necessarily, I don't want a new building in town. It's more like, why does this have to impact us?
But I think there's so much good stuff, there's so much stuff that we purposefully included when we wrote this plan, though, that it doesn't just benefit the students who are there during the day. And I think that's the best part about the plan, is that it really is a community space. And like that, making it a community space is also all about, that's also on SPS at the end of the day, too, to be able to like create a program around it and for us to be able to make it an environment in the future that allows for these things to operate. For example, the in-house field trips, having the ability to do things across multiple schools. You're talking about potentially, with a consolidated larger school option, the ability to impact close to a third of the elementary school students in the district. So that's a pretty substantial amount of students to initially benefit, but then also how can you get to the rest of the elementary school students?
And I think it allows us to look at what the other schools have to offer or don't necessarily, and then how we can augment that to make the opportunities at the remaining schools as great as they're going to be at the new building. So, and I think that that's kind of part of what we need to start thinking about. How do we do that, and what does that look like? I do think that I don't want to add any more meetings to anyone's schedule, but I do think it would be really valuable if we went to the PTO meetings at the Hanson, the Gibbons, and the Daw.
Yes.
Because I think that there are options for redistricting where there will be great impacts to those communities, and I really don't think that they're aware of that impact. And in that case, they will want to provide feedback. And I'm not sensing that I don't know that they're not wanting to be involved. I don't think they think
That's my impression too from the PTO, because I've reached out to my kids' PTO and I've gotten, oh, that's nice, like, we know the South School building, we're behind that, but the understanding the redistricting,
Right.
the possibility that how much it could affect the community is just not understood at this point.
Yeah, so, I mean, we will do a ton of that, but right now, Jake, thanks, I apologize, I kept you long.
No, I'm sorry.
No, right now, we don't have anything, I mean, we get up and tell them about the many options, but people don't want to hear about many options. I mean, they may, but they want to hear about the option you chose and why the hell you chose it and how it's going to affect them. So once we get to that, I mean, they'll be sick of us at some point, but I hope they will be, mostly Dom.
The problem is, though, is that option is chosen or past the point that we actually have to make the redistricting choice.
Yeah, right, it's
So,
right.
I mean, you still have to
You're
get in
right.
front of them, and getting to the PTOs, as a school committee member, it was something we did with the superintendent, we visited every PTO for the high school. It was an easier sell for them because it was going to impact every one of
Everybody,
them.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I also like the idea, Dom, that was mentioned earlier today, and what's being done by Vertex and Dedham
Yeah.
with the community survey that's going out, and that's an opportunity, again, to just, plaster. We also did Little League games and stood at fields and handed out, slips of paper, because sometimes a QR code on the wall, it goes, you walk by it, and unless somebody puts something in your hand to act on.
We're gonna work
Yeah.
on the, like I said, the bulk mailing and the survey.
Yeah.
We've got the, a template, we're just gonna, we gotta work it.
That's excellent.
I'll just add, if we're looking now at meeting with PTOs, you have 2 more meetings to make it's just the timing right now is just very tough heading into the summer. Not that I don't think you could maybe pull something, but the PTOs are really not engaged during the summer months because they come back in September. So it's just something to consider time-wise in this process of when you need that feedback and how you need that feedback.
When do they meet?
June 30th is June, right before school ends, is usually, some are the first, like, the South is usually the first Wednesday of every month, and the others have their meetings, but you're running into that timeline right now.
So if we did push back the submission date, that would require at least the school committee to do some meeting during the summer months, which, I'll leave it to them.
Yeah.
Leave it to you, Catherine, how you want to do those. I think you could probably do some of that by Zoom or otherwise. It's your call but, leaving that aside, if we make it known to them that they, even if it's not their formal meeting, that those active people know that those meetings are happening, that would be helpful that's our job. I'm talking to you like it's.
No, yep, no.
Like you have to do it, but
Fine.
that's not what it meant.
I would add that if we do end up pushing it back, one thing, and I talked with Dr. Rob about this, is that there are summer programs during the month of July, and we can plaster those. Those are a lot of very involved families.
Oh, that's good.
There's going to be theater performances. We can plaster the high school auditorium. Like, look at this nice renovated high school. Would you like to talk about the renovated, elementary school and the redistricting? So
That's
if
a
we were to
great
go
idea.
that, I think that those would be families to really tap into.
You could even, at the drop-off, or probably pickup would be better, literally have someone standing in the carpool line handing paper at in every window. That's a great idea.
That's a great idea.
Okay.
I'm writing these down.
I would also just add, is there any way to survey when people would find some of these forums more beneficial? Plastering some of the PTO pages, leveraging some of those, leveraging the page to garner more involved or more better targeted times for some of these. I don't know. I'm just trying to find a way.
Not sure I understand, but.
So I know that the
That's me more
attendance
you.
was pretty low at the last community forum that we had. And I think 10 is tough on a Saturday for families. I know we've kind of talked about that. But I think what works for families, or whoever, or community members, where else could we utilize I mean, we could at least start with the PTOs, if you were looking to do some sort of polls from just getting, that's a start.
I mean, I think if you're if you're thinking of it from the perspective of a family, you have to look at the dates they're already committed potentially. Because typically that means that the other dates, they have other commitments like dance and sports or whatnot. So I think PTO meetings would really be the best place at this time, because that's a date that people already have in their calendar if they're gonna go. You know, do you know what I mean?
No, I agree. My only concern, again, is just the
Exactly.
timing
No,
of that
right.
August for October.
Right.
And how that ties in when the PTOs won't be,
I think that we're in that season where people have things almost every night.
right, agreed.
You know, I mean, that's the tough thing about
Agreed.
spring, especially with kids. You know,
Cool. So I think the way we started was a discussion of whether we're going to push back or not, and you, DRA and Vertex were looking for a little guidance. Do we have any last thoughts on that?
I think the conversation earlier, again, at the working group meeting, was that school committee meeting date is probably the best indicator of how they felt they were prepared. So after they have their meeting on, the 25th,
Right, and I don't mind waiting to that, as long as DRA is okay waiting until that date.
Yeah, we're continuing the work,
Okay,
you know, that will, as Joe brought up, it's really getting that information out.
cool. All right, so that we can put on for a future date. We're ready to move on to communication?
We talked about it,
Yeah.
you know, the bulk mailing, the survey, using Jake's word, plastering everything as much as we can out there, getting out there with the PTO, preschool, parent groups, we're trying to hit it all, reaching out to Marcia. The next item was the project budget template, which I'm going to table. We'll get next time through, really what Tim was talking about, the Form 3011, which is what we do, the MSBA, we'll have a better idea anyways next month. But we just wanted to bring that up. So I think
Cool.
we're,
And the last item of business I know is we do have invoices that I forgot to put on the agenda.
if it's allowed,
Yeah,
I can,
does anybody have any objection to bringing that up under new business? It was a last-minute item that the chairman could not anticipate, but why don't we see what they are, because,
we only have two invoices. The Vertex invoice is for the month of February for $11,096, and the DRA invoice for the month of February is for $21,000. The total is $32,096. And
when's our next,
I have a sign-in sheet.
and our next meeting is May 10th?
The,
Or May 11th, excuse me, yes, sorry.
Which- oh, you, did I send it over to you already?
Has everybody, would anybody like to see?
Here are the invoices.
Okay.
And you can give that to Christine. I guess we just need a motion.
And if you'll allow me, I'll make the motion, since I'm the guy who brought this up under new business. I move to pay DRA invoice number 2218, what the hell? It's the invoice that you're all holding in your hand for $21,000 dated March 31st, 2023, and Vertex invoice dated 3/31/23 for $11,095.50. I move to pay both of these invoices. Is there a second to that?
second.
Is there any further discussion on that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Great. Apologies, my fault again I was hastily wrapping up the agenda this Monday, so. And at that,
Can I just ask
Yeah,
one
please.
question under new business? Well, I guess it's next. Is there an inventory anyway from the South School of items that have been donated, such as the upper playground at the South School that was donated by the PTO a few years back, that will go to a new school? Because that was the intention when it was initially bought. Is there anything being inventoried?
We had so much of this
You
at
did?
the high
Okay.
school.
Okay, I was wondering, well, I just wondered, because I hadn't seen anything,
I don't
but
know.
there are things that are like benches of people who have passed away and in memoriam. I just don't want to lose sight of that and have that built in. Like I
yeah.
said, I know the play structure, because,
Carl and Courtney are shaking their heads because we went through this whole process to
Okay.
identify that and also ask about things that we weren't sure about.
okay,
Plaques on the wall.
agree, okay.
Town likes to dedicate things.
And-
They do, I
and
just want to make
also,
sure we
There's a
paid.
certain point in the process that we will inventory existing furniture and to see if it can be either reutilized within the town or donated,
That's
that
great,
happened in the high school as well.
that's great. As long as there's a placeholder and a process, I am fine, thank you.
Anything you want to add, Courtney?
No, I remember putting that together with, we worked with Joel Harding on it. We walked the school a few times.
Yeah.
For the South, really?
No.
for the
no,
high
for
school.
the high
High
school.
school.
Oh, good God, the high school was horrible. I mean, in a good way. All right. Anything else for new business from anyone? I did want to, just, one thing that Joe mentioned earlier is, the idea about, what we're going to, what the district is going to do with the building or buildings. I know there's a plan for the Wilkins School particularly, but, so the more I hear about this project from, in the community, the criticism that I hear, which is probably unlike the criticism that someone like Katie would hear, is mostly based on cost. And it's cost in the context of what we've spent recently and what we're looking to spend tomorrow on a fire station. So, I mean, to the extent that there is any plan to, that's a policy, statute says, as long as the property is being used for school purposes, it's the school committee's decision. So we can't usurp that. But at the same time, we should at least put it on our radar to start that discussion, or at least encourage that discussion to be started, so that, because I think that, in the end, this is gonna come down to, my guess is, a project of, yeah, we love it, but we just can't afford it, thanks for your work, or, we love it, and geez, yeah, there's a way that softens the blow on cost, because we can do X, Y, and Z. So, and we do need a new school. I don't think anybody would challenge that. So, I'm glad that Joe brought it up, because I've had that in mind too. So I wanted to, we have too much to do in the short term, that it's not something we should be focusing on immediately, but soon.
No, but the questions are going to come up
Yeah.
early and often as to what's going to happen with these buildings. So I think we have to have some position to take.
I agree.
Well, we'll have to address it.
Yes.
To the MSBA anyways, too.
Yes.
They're going to request that.
You actually made the best argument yet for a consolidated school, is that if we only build a new South School, there are no buildings that are coming out of stock. It is just, again, no ability to deal with aging infrastructure that's not energy efficient or.
Right.
Fair point.
Yeah.
Anybody have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Done.